Let's now open template.html file, which came with the exercise files. The first thing you can see, obviously, is a boilerplate for our HTML document. What it has is a doc type declaration here telling browser what sort of document it is. In our case, it's obviously HTML5. Then we have the wrapping HTML tags with the language defined as English. Obviously, if you are coding in a different language, make sure that you update language accordingly. Then we have a heads section with meta character set to UTF-8. I think this is pretty much the same for every project, pretty much, unless there's any kind of characters in the language that you are actually building for that require different character set. Obviously, check Google for the information on that. Then we have meta viewport, which is basically telling us that obviously we want this website to work well with any sort of device, whether it's mobile, tablet, or desktop. Then we have title tag, link to the font awesome, which we're going to be using to create those social icons within the navigation. Then we link into the Google fonts, as when we are using Roboto font family here. And then we have link to our minified version of the CSS within the assets directory. And we're starting with the full stop, which indicates that we want to start from the current directory. The full stop basically means the file from which we're actually using this full stop at this level, which would be this PHP course directory on our desktop, then navigate to /assets, which is this assets directory, and then obviously points to the file we want to include, which is our appmin.css. Now, this file is the minified CSS file, which includes Zerp Foundation basic styling. And if I scroll right to the bottom, you can see there are a few custom style definite declarations as well here, which I've obviously added to make sure that the site works nice, all these colors and so on. So you can obviously update this, or if you, as I said, mentioned earlier, if you are familiar with Sass, obviously you can use the other files which we've removed in the first video. Okay, so this is our CSS. Then we have jQuery, the minified version of jQuery, and appmin.js included as well. Well, this file, I'm going to open the non-minified version so you can see. Basically, it's just there are two objects which I'm using here, which I've created earlier for the slider and for the navigation, basically, so that it works well as well. Okay, so we have the basic structure. Now let's start with the first section tag. So section, and we are going to give it an ID of wrapper. And what we are going to put inside of this wrapper, we are going to start with the pre-header, and I'm going to put some comments so I know exactly what goes where. So pre-header, there we go. And I'm starting with the section again, and this section ID will be pre-header wrapper. Then if I scroll down, so we've got pre-header wrapper. Inside of this, using Zerp Foundation structure, I'm going to put a div with the class raw, and then another div with the class medium -6 columns. Obviously, it's medium -6 space, then columns. And then I'm going to apply the ID pre-header left to it as well, because I want to override some styling for this specific element. And then I'm going to have a similar thing right after. So div with class medium 6 columns. And then ID for this one will be pre-header right. This is where our social buttons will go. Let's start with the pre-header left. Inside of this pre-header left, I'm going to put the paragraph with the ID of telephone number, and I'm simply going to put in between the opening and closing paragraph tag, I'm going to put call, as, and then colon, and some number. You obviously use the number that you're going to be using on your website. I'm just going to put some fake numbers, so 0800, 800, and 800, for instance. And then for the right pre-header, I want to have those social buttons. So it's going to be a nav tag with the ID social, social buttons. And what I'm going to do next is basically put these anchor tags. So href, I'm going to just make them blank for the time being. Obviously, you link to your profiles. I don't really need to, so I'm just leaving them with the hash. Then tag with the class FA. This is where we're using this font awesome style sheet basically, and then FA-Facebook. And if I close this tag, now I'm going to duplicate it twice. The next one will be FA-Twitter, and the last one will be FA-LinkedIn. Use as many of those social icons that you need. Obviously, go to the Font Awesome website and check what icons they have for which social profiles. I only need 3 for this project, so that's all I'm going to have. Now, if we scroll down and after, let's just see, obviously, this is our pre-header wrapper section. I'm using PHP Storm, so I can collapse this code, so I've got it on in one line. If I want to see everything again, I just click here and it's just basically expanding. So the next section is going to be a header. So right after this section, I'm going to put another comment and say header. You don't have to use these comments, but it's just I like to do things this way because it's basically separating the structure a little bit nicer. Okay, so we're going to start with another section. There we go. And this one will have an ID of header wrapper this time. And inside I'm going to use again div with a class raw. And then we have another div. Actually, there will be 2 divs with a class. First one large 5 columns, and it's going to have an ID of header left. And I'm just going to duplicate this one. The next one will be, rather than large 5, it's going to be large 7, and it's going to be header right. Okay, now just a quick note on these classes here. Basically, I'm not going to spend time and explain exactly what they do and so on, but just so you've got roughly a better understanding of how it works. Basically, large 5. If you try and divide your entire layout into 12-column grid on the large devices like desktops, this tells the browser on the large device use 5 columns out of 12 for this first div. And for the second div, use 7 columns out of 12. In other words, this second div will be larger than this first one. They're both going to be in line on large device. But if we go to tablet and mobile device, because we haven't defined, as we did in the first one, we've used medium, here 6 for both, because we haven't defined medium and small selector here, that means that on medium and on small, they will be one after the other. So basically, this one is going to be at the top, this one is going to be at the bottom. But on the large device, the first one will take 5 columns on the left, and then the second one next to it in the same line will take 7 columns. So with this first one, the pre-header here, basically we have medium, which means from medium up. In other words, it's going to cover tablets, but also desktops. So unless we obviously used large here and declared that we want on large devices, we want the split to be different. But if we specify just medium without overwriting with large, then for medium and large devices, it will apply, in this case, 6 columns for both, which means half of the screen and half of the screen for both of the divs. And then on small, because small, it hasn't been defined here, on small, basically this pre-header left with the telephone number will go on top, and the social buttons will go underneath. So that's how basically Zurb Foundation selectors work, more or less. Obviously, if you want to find out more about Zurb Foundation, obviously go to Zurb Foundation website and try and read obviously what they've got there. Okay, so in the left header, what I want is the logo. So what I'm going to do is use the div again with the ID logo, and I've got all the styling already prepared. Obviously the styles that you've downloaded contain all the styling for the logo, and inside of this div I'm going to put the anchor tag so we can link the logo nicely to our homepage, so just the /. And then obviously in between the opening and closing anchor tags, let's put the name of the business. In our case, it's going to be simply a fruit bowl, so fruit bowl. There we go. So that's our logo on the left. On the right hand side, however, I'm going to have a navigation. And now let me close this file browser here so we can have a little bit more room. Okay, now we need 2 types of the navigation. The first one will be for tablets and desktops, and the second one will be for handsets, basically for mobile phones. And the difference between the two will be that on the desktop and tablets, we're going to have buttons, and on the mobile handset, on our smartphone, we will see the drop-down menu, like a form drop-down menu, basically. So let's start with the one for the tablets and desktops. We are going to start with a div with the ID of navigation, and then we are going to apply the class show for medium up. What that means, again, this is one of the Azure Foundation selectors. It will only show this div and content of this div on medium and larger devices, which is basically tablet up. So tablets, laptops, and desktops will display this div. For the second one, let's create another. Rather than div now, we're going to use a form straight away. So form, and we are going to use the class show for small only, which means only on small devices show the content of this wrapper. And obviously, in between the opening and closing form, we are going to have the select form element. But for the time being, let's just focus on the first navigation. Okay, for this first navigation, we are going to put a number of anchor tags again. So href with the / for the first one. And then it's going to be, you can use capital, lowercase. I'm going to use capitals for this navigation. So home, and then duplicate this one. Next one will be about us. Another one, this one is going to be products. And another one, this one will be contact us. And now obviously these links we will work with in just a moment, but I'm going to set them straight to where I want them to point. The second one, homepage, is just a / because it's just directly going to the index file. The second one will be about after the /. The third one is going to be / products. And then for the last one, we will have a / and contact. So this is our main navigation, which will be displayed again only on tablets and desktops, and obviously laptops, anything that's size of a tablet or larger. Now, for the small devices, which will be our smartphones, we are going to use the select with the ID of navigation select. We are using this ID later on in a JavaScript, which I've already created as well, so that whenever the new selection is made, the page reloads and we are redirected to the page, which is basically fetched from the value of each of these option elements that we're going to apply now. So option, the first one, with the value /, we are just trying to mimic what we've got in this main navigation. So basically all these values will be copied to this options now. And the first one will be home, and then I'm going to duplicate it 3 times. The second one is again about us, and then we have products, then we have contact us, and navigation is exactly the same. So about after the /, then we have / products, then we have / contact. So when we select one of these options, we will be redirected to one of these pages basically. Now next thing is our slideshow. So if we scroll down after this section tag for the header, we are going to create another section, and we apply the ID of slider wrapper to it. And in between the opening and closing section tag, we are going to put div with the class slider. And then we are only going to put one item in, but later on we're going to be looping through a number of items. We are going to put the div with the class slide. And inside of this, we are going to have an image source. At the moment, I'm just going to put /, and then we're going to have alt attribute as well. At the moment, I'm just going to put image. Okay, now, very important thing about the images, which I haven't mentioned yet. If I just open the file browser, we only have assets for obviously JavaScript and CSS files. Another thing you need to do is to create a new directory here called images, and inside of this images we are going to create another subdirectory called slideshow or slider. And inside of this slider, put some images. Obviously, I can't provide the images because there are certain copyrights. Obviously, I've only purchased the license for this course, the single license for the images I'm using within this course, so I can't obviously distribute them. So make sure that you get some images, obviously, and crop them to the right dimensions. And the dimensions that I'm using for the images within this course are 1000 pixels wide by 450 pixels high. And I'm going to upload these images now together with the logo. Again, logo, whether you have an existing logo or you need to create, obviously make sure that you get one as well. Put the logo directly under the images directory. Okay, so now that I've added my images, I can, as you can see, they are named sequentially. So it's 01, 02, 03. All of them, they are JPEGs because they are of a bitmap type, and JPEG is obviously a compression for a bitmap. Then for the logo, I'm using SVG format, which is a vector format, so it resizes nicely as well whenever needed, obviously without an increase in the file size. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually add these images directly to this slider here. So image source / images, then we have slider, and then we have o1.jpg. There we go. So that's basically because obviously I'm at the moment inside of a template. So it's going to the images. That's why the first directory after the first starting / is images. Then we have slider, and then we have o1.jpg. We could also use the full stops here. Not necessary, but let's stay consistent the same way as we've got the script in the other pages. Although if you were to be going deeper with the URL structure later on, which we won't be doing during this course, you would probably have to remove this full stop from the beginning and just use the /. But at the moment, let's just stick to the full stop before the first /. Okay, then we go for another slide. I'm just going to create them all. We have 3 of them, so it's the third one as well. And let's paste another one. Second and third one. There we go. So we've got 3 slides. So our slider is now done. The next thing we need to do after the slider section, again, I'm going to collapse the slider, and I'm going to collapse the code for the header and pre-header so we can nicely see it. Obviously, before the slideshow, again, before this slider, I'm also going to put a comment, slider. There we go. And let's collapse it again. Okay, so we can clearly see we've got first section, second and third section. The next section will be the content. So comment for the content. There we go. And again, we're going to start with a section with the ID content wrapper. And in between the opening closing section tags, we are going to put div again with the class raw. And then we have another div with the class column. So class column. It's going to be a simple column, unless you obviously want to have, say, content on the left column on the right hand side. Then obviously, again, use Zerp Foundation selectors to split it accordingly to make sure, let's say, left hand side's got 8 columns, while on the right hand side the column has only 4 or something like this. It's entirely up to you. I'm going to be using just a single column for the content of the pages, so that's all I need here. Okay, so that's our content wrapper. The next one will be the footer. So another comment, footer, oops, 2 hyphens. Okay, and this time rather than section, I'm going to use footer tag with the ID footer wrapper. And again, same thing as before, div with the class raw and a div with the class column. Just a single one. We only have a copyright notice in the middle. Again, you format this whichever way you want. It's really PHP course, not HTML and CSS, obviously. So it's entirely up to you how you're going to lay it out. Then paragraph here, and then copy HTML entity with the anchor tag again, href, and I'm going to link to SSD tutorials site. So http://ssdtutorials.com. And then we're going to have target blank. And in between, we're going to have, actually, let's put in one line, SSD tutorials. But one thing that I'm going to have right after is going to be a year. For the time being, I'm just going to hard code it as 2015. Later on, we are going to use PHP for that. Okay, so that's pretty much the entire structure of our page. If we now go back to our browser, and we're obviously working with the template.html, so navigate to template.html, and as you can see, everything looks as we would expect it, except for the footer. And the problem with the footer is if we go back to the editor, that it should actually be outside of this main wrapper. Inside of the wrapper, we only have pre-header, header, slide, and content, but the footer should be outside of it. So if I now save it, go back to the browser, refresh the page, and if we scroll down, you can see now this footer is on a green background, which is what we want. Obviously, we haven't got it on the content yet, but we're going to be playing with the content later on. That's not that important for this project. Content, you can put anything you want. Obviously, the important bits will start right after this video.